Can you join the army with a green card?
Yes, green card holders are eligible to join any branch of the U.S. military, including the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. However, they must meet all other requirements for enlistment, such as being medically and physically fit, in good moral standing, and meeting the age, education, and test score criteria. I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any other questions.
Border crisis, military age men.
Border crisis military age men.
All but disappeared from most television newscasts and newspapers. It's disappeared on newspaper, but of course it has not disappeared on the border. The border crisis is still getting worse, not better. Despite all the assurances of a crackdown, the Border Patrol once again says they don't have the staff to process everyone. For the fifth straight day, more than 300 migrants were dropped off in buses across San Diego, bringing the number more than 3,300 border crossers who were released into that city last week. The city's Border Patrol facilities are simply overwhelmed. They have nowhere to put the people. We're seeing trains full of migrants racing towards the Rio Grande. Folks are climbing over the fences. We're often told that these migrants are made up of families escaping roving gangs of thugs in places like Venezuela or Guatemala. The reality, though, is that we don't know who these people are or where they are coming from. Border Patrol now reports a 900% spike in Chinese migrants crossing the southern border in the last year. The numbers are staggering. Almost 10,000 Chinese nationals were encountered at the border, and just 1,500 of those were made up of families. The rest, over 8,000 Chinese nationals crossing the border, were single. They're not families looking to live the American dream. In reality, we don't know who they are, and we don't know the exact number of Chinese nationals crossing. We know the ones who are caught. Oftentimes, it's at least double that are not caught. Here now to discuss all of this, Chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Congressman Mark Green. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. It's curious, right? Because China, it's not like you can just drive to the airport and hop on an international flight. You need an exit visa. You got to get money out of China. All of these things. Who are all these people?
Well, there's a considerable number of them that actually have CCP ties and PLA ties.
All right, so this is the People's Liberation Army.
Yeah, and the Communist Party.
And so we're looking at the video of these guys. When you say ties, what does that mean?
So there are actual members who were in the People's Liberation Army, the People's Liberation Air Force, and they are here in the United States, released into the United States.
So what are they here to do? They're probably to work at their grandma's Chinese restaurant? What's going on?
No, they're claiming asylum, that they're fleeing, looking for a better life, that they're persecuted back in China. And in the numbers, 18,000 this fiscal year, by the way. 18,000.
So 18,000 caught.
18,000 caught, that's exactly right.
So what do we expect that to mean in terms of the numbers who have gotten away?
So typically you say 20%. That's what Chief Ortiz, when he was the border chief, said, that the unknowns are 20% more.
Right, but plus the gotaways. We don't know how many.
That's exactly. Well, the gotaways are a different set of numbers.
Yeah, all right. So what's the deal here? Are these spies who are coming in to be ready for a conflict with China and all of a sudden start, like the Russians had the illegals program during the Soviet times?
So I think you would understand this because you went and did some reporting in Ukraine, as I recall. This is what concerns me. Clearly, the Russians infiltrated people, migration, who set up homes in Ukraine, and then were saboteurs in the invasion. Now, I'm not saying that China is going to invade the United States, but if we were to defend Taiwan, the highest number ever before was 1,200. And suddenly, in this fiscal year, 18,000? You have to think that this is a part of some plan or strategy. You'd be foolish not to at least consider that.
All right, so we're looking at pictures, all military-age men, a lot of them with shaved heads, a lot of them have come through Venezuela where the Chinese have very close ties. You say we'd be fools not to consider it. So they become saboteurs during a war with China over Taiwan, something like that. Is there anything we can do about this?
Well, right now, they're basically bum rushing our military installations and stumbling into the gates in large numbers. We actually had a group that were caught in scuba gear swimming off of a naval installation.
They were just tourists, though, right?
They were just
great scuba diving.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you've got to raise the question mark here.
We've just got.
As of 2017, there were an estimated 10.5 million illegal immigrants living in the U.S., so there is a high demand for a more consistent path to citizenship. If you enter the country illegally, accessing citizenship is harder, but not impossible. There are 4 main paths. You've probably heard of the green card marriage. It does provide citizenship, but if you entered illegally, you have to leave and interview through a U.S. consulate office to get a green card, then return. If you're someone who has the support of a U.S. employer, that is also a path. Again, that does require that you leave for a brief period and then come back. Those seeking asylum and victims of certain crimes who help U.S. law enforcement are eligible. And finally, the non-LPR cancellation or removal. This process only applies if you've lived in the U.S. for at least 10 years, have committed no crimes, and leaving would cause hardship to your legal citizen children or spouse. The latter is used as a defense in immigration court, and only 4,000 green cards a year are issued in this way. Over the last decade, more than 7.3 million applicants have been granted citizenship, despite how complex that process can be.
If you have a family member in the military, they could get you a green card. And if your parents entered the country without authorization, this is actually only one of the 2 ways that you can get them a green card. It's called parole in place, and it's sort of like DACA, meaning it's protection from getting deported and temporary work authorization. All you need is a spouse, parent, or child under 21 who is either in the reserves, active duty, or veteran status. USCIS literally doesn't have enough of these. They're on a shortage of PIP applications. So if you qualify, make sure to apply soon. If you have a family member in the military, they could get you a green card. And if your parents entered the country without authorization, this is actually only one of the 2 ways that you can get them a green card. It's called parole in place, and it's sort of like DACA, meaning it's protection from getting deported and temporary work authorization. All you need is a spouse, parent, or child under 21 who is either in the reserves, active duty, or veteran status.
What is parole in place?
The topic for today's video is parole in place. We're going to review in this video what is this process and why is it a huge benefit. We'll also talk about what the requirements are. If you enter the United States without a lawful entry and you have a close family member relative that is in the military, either current or past, you might be eligible to apply for parole in place. This is a great benefit for military service members and veterans who have close relatives that entered the United States unlawfully. It's called parole in place because the applicant is not required to leave the United States in order to receive it. It is a process where you're paroled in, but you actually have never left. There are many benefits for parole in place. And if your parole in place request is approved, you will receive the following benefits. So first of all, you'll receive a 1-year period of authorized stay in the United States, which you can renew it in increments of 1 year at a time. You'll receive a work permit to authorize your work here in the United States. And most importantly, it allows you to apply for a green card here in the United States if you're otherwise eligible for it. And that's a huge benefit. And why is this such a big deal? Let me give you an example. Let's say you entered the United States without inspection. So you entered without going through a port of entry or an airport, without a visa, okay? And now you want to apply for your green card. Let's say you're married to a U.S. citizen, or maybe your child turned 21. You cannot do this in the United States if you do not enter legally. And the reason is that in order to apply for a green card in the United States, you need that legal entry. You need to show that you are inspected, admitted, or paroled into the United States. So the regular process for applicants in this situation is that they need to go back to their home country to apply for the green card. Okay, so if you came in without inspection and you're married to a U.S. citizen and you want to apply for your green card, you have to do that in your home country. Now, if you've been present in the United States unlawfully for more than 1 year, your departure of the United States to go for your interview will trigger a 10-year bar to return. Now, parole in place solves this issue by giving you or giving the applicant that entry that they need in order to apply for their green card in the United States. Okay, which is a process called adjustment of status. So how do you qualify for parole in place? What are the requirements? Parole in place is available for an individual who is present in the United States without inspection, so came in illegally, and is the spouse, child, or parent of an active duty member of the United States Armed Force, or someone who has previously served in the U.S. Armed Force or the Selective Reserve. It's important to know that if you are here in the United States and you came in with a U.S. visa, you're not eligible for parole in place even if you overstayed your visa. So it's only available for people that entered without inspection, without a visa. Okay? So guys, that was just a general review.
Of the federal government. How about the snoozization? That's not even a word. But was somebody asleep with a switch? What in the world? You're a defense secretary.
It's crazy, Harris. I mean, leave it to the Biden administration to take something routine like an elective surgery, which happens often with members of Congress, with members of the administration, and botch it. I mean, this is dangerous incompetence. It's not just incompetence. It's not just a lack of transparency. It is dangerous because not only, which has been pointed out multiple times, are our men and women in uniform and our military installations abroad under constant attack, particularly in the Middle East, but there is a heightened level of engagement around the globe. And when you have the Secretary of Defense, sixth in command, out of commission, his deputy not even knowing that he himself is out of commission in the ICU and on vacation, I mean, this is absurd. This just is another example as to why actions have consequences. And I go back to the 117th Congress, Harris, when there was a vote under Speaker Pelosi to grant a waiver to allow Austin to become Secretary of Defense. Now, the rationale back then was, well, you know, it's been done before, so we should do it again. I was proud that I voted against granting Austin that waiver. He should have never been Secretary of Defense because he was a failed commander when he was in control of Central Command. In fact, when I was at the Naval War College, he was a case study in failures of leadership. We've known back then, and he has demonstrated, whether it was then with the botched Afghanistan withdrawal or now his lack of communication, he is not fit to be the Secretary of Defense.
Look, when we learned about that secure call that's brought about by the Situation Room, and all they knew was that he was in the D.C. area, there are so many questions now about, was he trying to hide something? And look, there are HIPAA laws, there are all sorts of things, but there's transparency that the people need to know in this country. And we didn't vote for him, as you just pointed out. That's not a person that we voted for. So if they're in charge of something that directly affects our well-being and national security at home and that of our soldiers and all branches of the military around the world, I think we need to know about it as a public. All right, and I'll move on to this. 2 days before the first House hearing on impeaching, speaking of our security, Homeland Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, he is at the border in Eagle Pass, Texas, meeting with officials and Border Patrol agents talking about the illegal immigrant crisis that he has called simplest, as we know.
The White House, the administration, Secretary Mayorkas have put a welcome mat out. I believe Secretary Mayorkas is an abject failure, but it's not because of incompetence. I believe he has done this intentionally. I think these are intentional policy decisions that he's made, and I think there must be accountability for that.
Congresswoman.
Harris, as we would say here in the South, he's a real peach. You know, he has lied repeatedly to Congress. He has been negligent in his duties. He needs to go. He needs to be impeached. Our national security depends on it.
Do you think it'll happen?
Absolutely. I have yet to meet one Republican. Heck, I even know of some Democrats that are anxious to get rid of him. And let me remind you, when behind closed doors, we told him, you're getting ready to be impeached. He said, you're not going to like who comes next. I asked him if that was a threat. Whoa. He just smiled. This man is dangerous. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he is two-faced. We need to get rid of him now.
What did he mean, who comes next?
Well, that was the big question. I asked him, I said, is that a threat? And he just smiled. And I thought, this man knows exactly what he's doing. This is 100% by design. They want an open border crisis, whether it is for a election, whether it's for future votes as they work to get rid of citizenship as a requirement for voting. We're not sure, but he was very, very clear in what he said, and there were other members in the room. So I will never forget that. And as we go to impeach him for his negligence, for him destroying our national security and eroding our national sovereignty, that will be top of mind.
Yeah, I wish somebody had gotten that on tape so we could play it over and over. Perhaps we will when you guys go into session with him to ask questions, bring that back up. That sounded like a threat. And as she said, it's got politics behind it. Okay, thank you so very much for being with me, getting us started today. Some big, heavy, important topics today, and we'll move forward. Congresswoman, thank you.
Jude, the servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, to them that are sanctified by God the Father, and preserved in Jesus Christ and called, mercy unto you and peace, and love be multiplied. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. For there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before of old ordained to this condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of our God into lavishness, and denying the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ. I will therefore put you in remembrance, though ye once knew this, how that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, after it, destroying them that believed not, and the angel which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness, upon the judgment of the great day. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them, in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication, and going after strange flesh, are set forth for example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Likewise, also these filthy dreamers defile the flesh, despise dominion, and speak evil of dignities. Yet Michael, the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke thee. But these speak evil of those things which they know not, but what they know naturally as brute beasts. In those things they corrupt themselves. Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsayings of Korah. These are spots in your feast of charity, when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds. Trees whose fruit withereth without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots. Raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame. Wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these saying, behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoke against him. These are murmurers, complainers, walking after their own lusts, and their mouth speaketh great swelling words, having men's person in admiration because of advantage.